Yes, I just want to engage in a brief analysis of what really happened, what we can speculate really happened with the last round of the battle between Donald Trump and Alvin Bragg, and also just take a look on what are the likelihood that Donald Trump will go to prison. Because we see a lot of people talking about that, that Donald Trump can go to prison. There's a lot of memes on the internet saying that he may go to prison. He might be finally convicted. He's indicted, but he has to go through a trial and all the procedures and the rigmarole associated with that. And quite a few people think that, oh yeah, he might go to prison. I am submitting that Donald Trump will not go to prison. I think it is highly, 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 highly unlikely that Donald Trump will go to prisons for reasons not so much about Donald Trump, but more that has to do with the logistics associated with the national security of the United States. But before I get to that, how was Trump outsmarted by Alvin Bragg? Well, we're all familiar with Donald Trump's style of doing things, that, he attacks, right? And he's very adept at, sending signals to his followers to get them to do things, right? And he's not bashful about using, force, to get his own way. And I'm sure any prosecutor who's thinking of going up against Donald Trump will have to take those elements, those factors into consideration. Not only with regards to safety for themselves as individual and their staff, but also, for their families and things like that. You have crazy people out there who would do crazy things, because they believe strongly in some things, and that includes Donald Trump. People who believe in what Trump stands for. But it is interesting that in the case of Alvin Bragg, remember there was a Manhattan district attorney who first had the case, right? Cyrus Vance, I think his name is. And then came Alvin Bragg. And Alvin Bragg picked up the case, and there were two top prosecutors on the case, two well-known, renowned, really good prosecutors on the case. And then Alvin Bragg had come out and essentially said that they're not going forward with the case against Trump, to the point where the two top prosecutors who were on the case, they resigned in protest, because they said they were essentially contending that the work that they had done and the evidence that they had managed to marshal up to that point was more than enough, to successfully prosecute Donald Trump on the Stormy Daniels hush money charge and, all the charges associated with that. But whatever happened in the back end there, Alvin Bragg had decided not to go forward with it. And that led to a lot of speculation and a lot of rumors, and including people, choosing my words carefully, people making allegations of that it was because of suspicious, unethical reasons, and even more, why Alvin Bragg had decided not to go ahead with the case. Others that argued that he was afraid, he was intimidated by Donald Trump and his followers and what may happen. And, there were allegations of cowardice on his part, that he wasn't ready for the big league and thing. There was even some who were saying that an ambitious prosecutor, they're strategic in what they do, and they are not likely, irrespective of what they say about defending justice and things like that, they're, that they pick and choose, and they they're not likely to pick cases that will not redound in their favor with respect to, future, with respect to their ambitions, whether or not they want to be attorney general after, or a governor, or a senator, or they want to rise, that it's all about strategy. So there were all these things being said about why Alvin Bragg wasn't going ahead with the case, and whatever. But then it came back up. And then it came back up, and then it got legs and it got traction, as we have been following in the papers and so forth and things like that. So when it gained legs and it was kind of moving forward, then Donald Trump now started to say stuff and do stuff and a whole bunch of stuff. But I guess two of the more noticed acts that Donald Trump did was that now infamous picture on the internet where, he's essentially over Alvin Bragg with a baseball bat. So he has a baseball bat and it's positioned like he's over Alvin Bragg and whatever. And people are saying, that's Donald Trump, sending messages to his followers to say, go and attack Alvin Bragg. Or sending a message to Alvin Bragg that if you go on with this, we're going to release the wolves on you, And then there was speculation about how will this impact Alvin Bragg, because from then he was reportedly laced with, a tremendous amount of threats on his life and his safety and all kinds of things and whatever. So the whole notion is people wondering like how it would affect him, how it would impact him. Then after that, Donald Trump just pointedly said that if he's indicted, something along is going to be death and destruction, something like that and whatever. And people are like, whoa, we're a little bit like, it's kind of getting serious now, right? And then again, so the whole question was, how is this impacting Alvin Bragg? And then, this went on and on and on and unfolding until we remember now when Trump, said that he would have been indicted on a particular Tuesday. And he was he encouraged people to come out and protest. Not as many people, some people came out and protest and all this stuff and whatever, but the call wasn't, people didn't really jump on this thing. And whether perhaps because of the way the January 6th insurrection people are being prosecuted and they see what's happening to them. So perhaps people are a little bit careful about just jumping out there like, Donald Trump, so let's go, or whatever. I think people, those prosecutions must have had an impact on some people willingness to go out there and say they're prosecuting for Donald Trump or so forth. But anyway, that was said, and people are thinking about what impact this would have on Alvin Bragg. But then his office, the Manhattan DA's office, came out and said, hey, we didn't say we're going to indict on any particular day. It's Donald Trump who says that, he was the one who came up with that. Whether that is true, we don't know. But that is what they came out and said. It's important to know that they came out and said that. After that, we heard that, oh no, we have some more witnesses that are coming in to speak to the grand jury and things. So we heard those reports. So, and then the impression was given like, what are you talking about? We haven't even reached a decision whether or not we're going to indict him because we're still bringing witnesses to the grand jury. So some people interpreted that like, oh, the process is still unfolding, so no decision has been made yet, regarding whether or not Mr. Trump will be indicted. Then after that, we heard that the grand jury was gonna take a break for a month. So some people, including myself, I was like, they're going to take a break for a month. And they were like, yo, Trump said something about indict. We didn't say anything about that. And, and we're still talking to more people and thing, Mr. Pecker from the Inquirer, magazine and all this stuff. So I was one of them who was saying, yo, it looks like Alvin Bragg is kind of, he may be backing out here, you know. We might not see an indictment. So I was one of them who considered that possibility based on what was being put out there in the public, you know, leaking to the public. Only to have the big announcement that this thing is going to happen. And it was a shock for a lot of people. It was certainly a shock for, you know, the folks over there on Fox News and a lot of Trump supporters. They were caught off guard. And reports are that Donald Trump was actually saying to people that Alvin Bragg is not going to go ahead with the indictment. And apparently there was some sort of deliberations that they may have been successful in getting to him, and intimidating him and having him back off or something like that. So supposedly, allegedly, reportedly, even Donald Trump was supposedly surprised at the announcement that this thing is going to happen, given the signals that were put out there that, you know, the process is still unfolding and we're not close to making that type of decision. I think Trump was outsmarted there. You know, I don't know if this was designed by Mr. Bragg or whatever the case may be, but on some level, you know, there was a decision like, let's take the narrative from him, because Donald Trump was the one who said, it's going to happen on this day, and I want you to go and protest and whatever. So he was out there essentially controlling the narrative. And by sending out those messages and, you know, putting a kind of lull in that momentum that he was generating about when it's going to happen, and then to have the DA's office now, the one who came out and made that statement, is almost like they took the momentum from Donald Trump. They took the narrative from Donald Trump. And in terms of the gamesmanship that usually occurs with these things and whatever, it seems that Trump was outsmarted there. Interesting, you know, this is a saga unfolding. But now onto the whole thing about whether or not Donald Trump will go to prison. No. It is most unlikely that Donald Trump will ever go to prison the way people are imagining this. And I don't think people are thinking this thing through. And it's a national security issue. One, remember, you know, the FBI is a domestic federal law enforcement entity, but the FBI protects the nation too. And if the FBI is now placed in a precarious position. Remember, the FBI is under the Department of Justice, but the FBI is now placed in a precarious position where, through the special prosecutor and the investigations of the Mar-a-Lago incident and the documents incident, and also the January 6th insurrection investigation, these are monumental investigations that could lead to prosecutions. But it's of a former president. But the FBI also has to protect the former president, because the former president, given all the knowledge he has about the country while he was president, and all the information, the national security information invested in him, you know, the FBI also has to protect that person. So the FBI have to do that kind of, you know, interesting balancing act where they might end up, you know, the FBI under the Department of Justice. So it's the Department of Justice doing it, the FBI doing it, the law enforcement and whatever. They have to also, you know, protect, from a national security standpoint, they have to also protect the person that they want to prosecute. And in doing so, I can't see them saying that we're going to put this person in prison. And to be more specific, the Secret Service. And so the Secret Service is about protection. It's not about law enforcement. You know, they have to follow the Constitution and the laws of the country as much as is possible. But they are more direct in protecting presidents and the former presidents. Because again, former presidents get Secret Service protection because before they were former presidents, they were privy to pretty much all the secrets of the country. You don't want them placed in a compromising situation with the enemies of the state, of the United States, to be able to have access to them through violent ways or to creative ways, to compromise them and to elicit and extract information from them. Therefore, former presidents must be protected, under the mandate, under a national security mandate. So, if Donald Trump is placed in prison, what's going to happen with the Secret Service? Were you going to put Secret Service members in prison rotating with him? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And it's not about Trump, right? It's about, the impossible logistics. Well, not impossible, but it's about the really demanding and problematic logistics associated with such a process where, the president must get Secret Service protection, and if he's in a penal facilities, if he's incarcerated around all these people, like the memes out there of Donald Trump in an orange prison suit and all of that, it's not going to happen because the Secret Service will not be able to do their job, and it's not like you can say, well, he's in prison, we're not going to put the Secret Service in. He has because it's not about him as an individual; it's about the country. Right? So the Secret Service who protect him must be where he is 24/7. Usually when a president goes jogging, you have several Secret Service agents jogging with the president. If the president is riding a bicycle, you have several Secret Service agents riding a bicycle with the president. Wherever the president is, he must have, he or she, for thus far it's all he's, must have a complement of Secret Service agents protecting the president. And that's not going to happen. And that is just a practical part of it. The other part of it is like, some people are going to give some consideration and say, okay, fine, Donald Trump is Donald Trump, but how would it look on the United States of America if a former president is actually in prison, and the constant publicity associated with that, and how other nations will interpret it and whatever. Some people look at it that America is weak. If you're going to have a former leader, while others would say, no, it's the rule of law, but what I'm saying is the people who are charged with, engaging in these considerations in terms of how these things could impact the nation, and they have to engage in these cost-benefit analyses of what it would mean for the country. You could see one side of that argument being like, this is not good for the country. And it's not even about Donald Trump. It's just not good for the country. So I believe that those two reasons, the Secret Service protection from a national security perspective, and also the impact it will potentially have on, the brand of the United States of America, and its ability, to continue to exercise its influence with credibility on the global stage, that it's pretty much unlikely. It's not going to happen, people. Donald Trump is not going to go to prison like many of you are envisioning it. Now, remember, though, that the way the United States work, it's governed by the three branches of government. Congress, that makes the law, the executive, the president, and the cabinet, and the judiciary, the courts. And the idea behind the courts is that they work independently. Now, the Supreme Court, if matters go up to the Supreme Court, national interest matters, national security, urgent national security matters should go up to the Supreme Court. Chances are with a 6-3 conservative majority in the present court, that they, you know, I don't see them making any ruling, you know, that is going to result in the president being placed in prison. Again, from a national security standpoint, even though there could be other ways that they would reach that conclusion, say it cannot happen based on, you know, the emphasis on what in the courts is referred to as, you know, originalism in interpreting the United States Constitution, and, you know, led by Clarence Thomas and Justice Alito and the like, and Gorsuch and things like it's unlikely that they're going to make some ruling to say he has to go to prison. And in the extreme, though, if something like that should even occur, it certainly would not be what many of you who do not like Donald Trump, what you're envisioning and what, you know, a lot of people are presenting out there. You're not going to see Donald, you know, even if say, no, okay, fine, we'll make a ruling here and justice is independent and justice prevail, he has to go to prison for a certain amount of time. It's not going to be Donald Trump. It would never be Donald Trump in an orange suit in prison amongst the general population. Now, even right now, you have low security prisons, right? Low security prisons, you know. But in the case of a former president, even if it reaches that level, there would have to be some sort of accommodation. You know, again, it would be stated in the interest of national security or whatever, or something like that. There would have to be some sort of accommodation for, you know, the president to, the former president to serve such time, which again, you know, I don't think it's happening, but in case of a scenario where they say this has to happen, it would have to be under some special circumstances, and, you know, where he's granted certain accommodations that nobody else could receive. Of course, that would stir some debate, because there's going to be a lot of people who say, oh, justice is not being fair, and there are other people who have committed more serious offenses or convicted of more serious, less serious crimes than he committed, and they are serving their time in prison. So he should, if justice is fair, he should serve his time. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, you know. But again, these are uncharted waters for the United States of America. To say these are, you know, these situations that they're in, they're unprecedented is an understatement. It's a profound understatement. And but as they work it out, and with all the shenanigans and the drama and the intrigue that I'm slated to unfold, particularly given that there's a constitutionally required election next year, the United States of America is in for a ride, is in for some craziness, right? And the America is already experienced a lot of craziness, is right now mired in a lot of craziness, and you know, for good or for bad, you know, they're slated to go through a lot of the craziness is slated to continue, and as that unfolds right into next year's 2024 election next year, and as we have seen with the January 6th debacle, is that even after the election, you know, some crazy things can occur. So the United States of America is in for a ride, you know, in terms of some more madness. But again, that ride, in my opinion, is and I've been wrong before, particularly with Trump. I must admit that there are times with Donald Trump, several times I've said, oh, this would never happen. It would never happen. And he has proved me wrong. Let me just admit that. But again, in my assessment here, one, he's not going to go to prison. He's not going to go to prison. Like some sort of deal would have to be worked out, or some sort of containment, if he's found guilty of any of these. And even the possibility of some of the cases, concluding, before he runs for president next year. I don't even know the likelihood of that, because I guarantee you there's going to be motions after motions after motions. And as they get closer to the election, which right now he may, all indications are he'll end up being, the Republican choice, to run for president. And, if that happens at some point, they may have to back down and say, well, he could be president, so we should stop prosecuting. We can't go forward with these prosecutions. And if they don't go forward and then he wins, then they go right back to square one, where they're like, no, we don't prosecute a sitting president, so he would have gotten away with it. So there's a way there for him to get away with it. And you can be sure he's aware of that. And he's real good at stretching out stuff and delaying stuff and having stuff get drawn out and thing. And one thing you may say of Trump, you may not like him or whatever, but he's a scrapper. He's a fighter in the system like that. He's not as brave. He's not as gangster as he portrays himself to be as an individual. But he knows how to use the resources around him, and he knows how to be strategic in manipulating the system, exploiting the loopholes and so forth and things like that. But it doesn't matter how it works out. He's not going to prison. Donald Trump is not going to go into prison. In fact, I don't see any president going into prison, separate from one who willfully commit like some brazen murder or something like that. But for these charges and so forth, he's not going to go to prison, okay? But let's see how it unfolds. We have been surprised before on multiple occasions with matters surrounding Donald Trump. Who knows? We may have a lot more surprises to come. Stay tuned.